What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr War Games, and today I am bringing you an update to Exosisters. So again, post Dimension Force, they got a brand new card in Exosisters Magnifica. Now most times one card isn't enough to kind of justify an update to a profile, but this card is actually crazy good. It is basically like a utopia for the deck, and what I mean by that is it's a card that merges two Exosister XYZs together and produces an effect which ultimately leads it to a double pop, or helps it kind of trigger the clause within the Exosisters themselves that their XYZs get additional effects on the turns they are summoned. With all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell and subscribe. I am also going to talk about some other alternatives within the deck that you can use in order to kind of spice it up a little bit, because keep in mind this deck also gets more support in the next set, Power of the Elements, as well. So with that out of the way, let's dive headfirst into the Exosister lineup. Now the majority of this, or the Exosister lineup, is pretty much similar. So we're going to go with Triple Sophia. Now all of the Exosisters have their counterparts as well. So this one is if you control another Exosister monster, you can draw one card. Then if you control an Exosister Irene, you get to gain 800 life points. If an opponent's monster or card, it moves a card from either graveyard, etc. in a damage deck, you can special summon one from your deck, one Exosister XYZ, using this face-up card you control as material. Now the best thing about that is right now, Branded is doing that all over the place. Branded Fusion, whether they go Albion or whether they go Lubellion, is moving a card from the graveyard. So what that ultimately gives you is this then gives you the ability to go straight into one of your extra deck monsters. One of them is negate a monster's effect on the field. One of them is banish a card on the field. So they've got a lot of ways to kind of utilize and actually become slightly more effective. Now, I always do these in the pairs, so after Sophia is Irene, and we're only playing two of this because it is ideally the most painful one to deal with. So you place an Exosister card from your hand onto the bottom of the deck and draw one card. It's basically Sophia, but worse. If you control Sophia, you gain 800 life points. Now, what I really would have liked with this deck is if each of them said, if you control the counterpart, rather than gaining 800 life points, it just puts you out of cowboy range. Like, special summon itself, like that would have been really cool. We've then got Triple Stellar. This card's awesome as well. I really like this one. So during the main phase, you can special on one Exosistem monster from your hand. Then if you control Elise, you gain 800 life points. Again, it shares the exact same effect that if your opponent moves a card from the graveyard, you can then XYZ on top. So obviously this one's great. This one is, okay, cool. I'm going to special summon another Exosister from the hand. And then Elise is also great. So Elise is, if you control an Exosistem monster, you get to special summon this card from the hand for free. So, like, that should have been the generic effect that went across all of them. I mean, I don't know if they kind of like created these and go, either went, we can't really give those effects to these ones, or they went, okay, we've got to make sure they all have something different. Like, gaining 800 life points, it's kind of like, bro, really? Like, give me the ability to special them. Anyway, this one is if you control Stellar, you gain 800 life points. And then again, special summon itself. They're all really weak as well. For level 4s, there's like, what, 500, 300... 400 and 100. So for all of your main deck monsters to be that weak, and then, like, I would understand, but these should have been like Zodiacs. It should have just been, you can just rank on top. Like, just one of these would have been great. Regardless, I still really enjoy the deck. It's relatively cheap to pick up as well, so definitely worth doing it in my opinion. Carrying on with the Exosister cards themselves, we've got triple packs. So during the main phase, you can pay 800 life points and add one Exosister card from your deck to the hand except itself. Then if you added a monster by this effect, you can special summon it if in your graveyard or on the field you have a card that is listed in its text. So again, add Elise, you control Stella, or Stella's in the grave, special summon it. So that's kind of where you want to go for from that. We've then got two Armand. Again, I'm still playing this, even though I probably don't need to, for the pure fact that we've already got the new one, Magnifica, does the job. But I still like the idea that you pay 800 life points to target an Exosistem monster you control and special summon an Exosister XYZ from your extra deck with a different name from the card you control, by using that target as material. So what I like about this is the fact that Magnifica could, in theory, go from itself, which is going to be a banish, into a Mikakilis, which is going to be a banish, and then you can go Armand and get you into another one, which can be a negate or something else. So I like the idea that you can, like, chain ride. And then the best thing about that is because they all transfer their materials, you can then just go into a fat Zeus. You can only activate one of these cards per turn, and you can only activate this card during your opponent's turn unless your opponent controls a monster special from the graveyard, which DP floating around, the chances are they probably are, but when they have DP on the board, it's going to be even harder for you to try and build your board. And the last one is Vardis. I still really like this card. Again, a lot of people don't. I understand why, but I still like the idea that you pay 100 life points to choose one Exosister monster from your deck, and then take one other Exosister monster from your deck that is mentioned in that card's text, and special summon both of them, but shuffle them into the deck during the end phase of the turn. The rest of this turn, you can't special summon except Exosisters, which isn't really the end of the world. But the idea behind this is, again, you just add Elise, special summon Stella, or add Irene, special summon Sophia. You know, you kind of get the point, but this is basically going to be a free two special monsters. And the idea is that if your opponent is worried that they don't want to activate Brand Infusion until they've cleared your monster off the board, so they don't then trigger the effects to give you the XYZs, they then try and kill them. They do that, you Vardis during the main phase 2, and then straight away you're just pretty much setting yourself up. So that's it for the Exosister monsters. I'm now going to show you the spicy interchangeable 5-card engine, and I'll explain why I chose this particular engine over the others, and kind of go from there. So in this one I've actually got a Time Thief engine. So we've got 3 Winder, 1 Beazle, and 1 Adjuster. Now the reason I went with this, and I'll quickly explain why I went with this, and then the other engines you could put in place of these 5 cards. So the reason I like this is if you open up Winder, you're going to make, like, the idea of this deck is you need to get your 2 level 4s to the board, whether it's through the Exosisters themselves, whether it's through just Jenny free summons, anything like that. You make your XOZ, you detach your material, you go into Winder. Winder, when it's normal or special, will search you out. Adjuster. If you haven't conducted your normal, you summon down the Adjuster. Adjuster will then Foolish Burial the Beazle ship. You've then got another rank 4 there for you. You've then got the ability, should you want to, is you use the Beazle ship effect to detach your material to summon itself back. That can then open you up the door for XYZ plays or additional link plays, entirely up to you of what you've got on the board. Now, it's not the best of the 5-card engines. I think what you kind of want to be looking for is you want cards that are one card going to give you a free level 4 whether you like it or not, regardless of if you've got an XYZ, regardless if you've got a monster special from the extra deck. If you think you want to go down the route of monsters that are special from the extra deck, you can go for a small Dogmatica package. Now, the Dogmatica package you would go for could be Ecclesia, as long as you don't trigger her effect, and Theo, because these are just cards that if there is a monster from the extra deck on the board, you can special summon them for free. The best engines, in my opinion, would be Ready Fusion and Instant Fusion, but that then eats up space in your extra deck. And then overall, the best engine, in my opinion, would be a Dragon Link engine. And what you do by that is you play 3... quick launch, and then you can play 1 Tracer and 1, I'm trying to figure out what the other one's called, 2 seconds, I've got it in the deck right over here, 1 Recharger. The obviously downside of that is that once you do that rocket play, if you were to activate Tracer's effect, you would lock yourself into Darks, but that then can open up the door for some Synchros if you wanted to. And ultimately what you would do is you could then use the ability of going into the Chaos Dragon. Again, it eats into your extra deck, so you kind of have to commit to that route. But regardless, playing free quick launch, because they're not once per turns, they're Ash bait and everything, if you open up 2 of them, that gives you an instant rank 4. So that's just a little 5-card engine that you can interchange to whatever you feel comfortable with, whatever you prefer to play. It could be a Utopia engine, because you've got the Astral Utopia that just special summons itself for free. And then if you wanted to go down the number route as well, that can give you a counter trap. And then, you know, the curse of modern day Yu-Gi-Oh! You have to play a range of hand traps. You could play cross out if you wanted to, but if I'm not going first, I've either got to interchange these to board breaking cards. And what I mean by that is Super Polys, which isn't so bad because you can go into a Mud Dragon, but Super Polys, Dark Rulers, Droplets, Kaijus if you wanted to, Lava Golems, Raw Sphere Modes, or hand traps. So we've gone with the standard 10 hand traps. You can make any of these free odds if you want to. You can interchange these to other hand traps that are more effective at your locals. But this is just like the average 10 hand traps you would play around with. Then of course we do have Pot of Prosperity. I mean, I'm trialing this out at the moment. Yes, it is stupid expensive, but with desires being limited, this is kind of like the best way of digging into your cards that you might need. The idea is that you've got some flex room in the extra deck and you're kind of trying to get to a secondary piece of the Exosisters. The issue with them is because they can't just special summon themselves for free, you do kind of need to look for the counterparts as well. One cool bike is you need to try and protect yourself from your hand traps where at all possible. And then free Shade Brigandine. Again, this is the only track card we play in the deck. It is a free level 4 summon. This is quite along the same routes as something like an Instant Fusion. Because of the Exosisters being generic, just 2 level 4s, this is one of the better cards you can use, and it allows you to play Time Thief Redoer. If you do change your plays and you're like, you know what, I actually want to go for a Rocket route, or I want to add some Synchro routes, or I want to use the Magister Zorro route, which basically allows you to, you know, Magister Zorro, special summon back, spellcast from the graveyard. It kind of gives you more alternatives if you want to, and can give you Synchro plays. So it really comes down to your personal preference of what adaptations you would like to make, and kind of go from there. Moving on to the extra deck, so we'll introduce the brand new card of Exosisters Magnifica. So this is a rank 8. You're not going to use it as a rank 8, and technically I don't even think you can summon it as a rank 8 because it requires 2 rank 4 Exosister XYZs. Must be special summoned by the with the above materials. This card can make a second attack during each battle phase, and then once per turn, quick effect, you can detach a material from this card to banish 1 card your opponent controls. While when your opponent activates a card or a quick effect, you can return 1 XYZ monster you own that is attached to this card to your extra deck. Then you can special summon that monster from your extra deck by using this card you control as material. This is treated as an XYZ summon, and you transfer its materials to that summoned monster. So the idea is that you're going to make this with 2 XYZ, so like let's say Mickey Killis and Kispedal. You're then going to detach a material. So if you want to double banish, what you do is you detach the Castel, you banish a card. You'll then use this effect, and it will return Mikilis to the extra deck, and then, you know, XYZ on top of it, giving you a Mikilis, which then gives you an additional banish. So you've got your 2 Magnifica. You've then, of course, got your 2 Mikilis. So this one, again, is generic 2 level 4s. Cannot be destroyed by battle with a monster special from the graveyard. You can only use each of the following effects once per turn. If you control this card that was XYZ summoned this turn by using Exosister monster you control as material, you get a quick effect to target a card your opponent controls or in their graveyard and banish it. You can detach a material from this card to add an Exosister spell or trap. So this is why it's also important, because when, you know, for example, Mikilis and Kipstel make the Magnificat, it doesn't actually allow you to transfer the materials. So it would just be a 2 material, or the XYZ materials for the Magnificat, which is why it's important, because your Mikilis gives you that ability to search the spell, and then your Castel gives you the ability to search the monster. And that's where you can kind of, again, continue on your XYZ. So that's how you kind of go from 1 XYZ to 2 XYZs and kind of move it from there. So again, this is generic, can't be destroyed by battle by a card special from the extra deck. Once per turn, if this card is XYZ summoned specifically that turn using Exosister material, neither player can special summon monsters from the graveyard. And for the rest of this turn, you can detach 1 material from this card, add an Exosister monster from your deck to hand. So again, this is basically like a graveyard lockout, which is really, really cool. It's kind of like a nice Abyss Dweller, and that's where the quick play armament comes into play as well. Is you can go from Castel to Mikilis, or Mikilis to Castel. So lock out the graveyard, banish a card, or banish a card, lock out the graveyard. We've then got the one Jabrain. This one is basically when it is summoned during the turn, or the turn it's summoned, it can target a card, affect monster your opponent controls, and negate its effect until the end of the turn. You detach a material from it. For the rest of this turn, all XYZ monsters you control gain 800 attacks. You can kind of see that its detach effect is pretty crud. But its summon effect is quite nice because it gives you basically an imperm. And then we've got the Acelia. So again, these are all obviously XYZ versions of the original Exosisters that we showed you in the main deck. So again, generic, can't be destroyed by the activated effects of monster special from the extra deck. So obviously you've got activated effects from the graveyard, and then you've got battle from the graveyard. So you can kind of see where that goes. So again, if this is XYZ on that turn using Exosister monster as material, neither player can activate cards or effects in the graveyard. And then you can detach a material from this card to target a monster your opponent controls and return it to the hand. That effect is actually quite relevant, because keep in mind Mirror Jade can't trigger when it goes back to the extra deck. So that's a way of protecting you from being entirely board wiped. Actually, I'm going to build off the back of that. That's part of the reason why we play Castel. Just to kind of bounce back the Mirror Jade so that it doesn't trigger. Baguska, this is actually really, really good in the matchup against Despias, because it shifts everything to defense and negates their effects. So as soon as you can get a monster on the board that can start like banishing off their Dragoons, or banishing off their the Mirror Jades, or anything like that, bouncing the Mirror Jades, stuff like that, Baguska just basically buys you 3 turns. It can also help lead you into a Zeus as well, and Zeus can just go, you know what, Mac Daddy, I'm going to clear the board. Tornado Dragon for back row. It's also quite good if you make this and then your opponent tries to set like Branded in Red or Branded Exile. You can just Tornado Dragon, get rid of it and not worry about it. And then Redoer, this is mainly in here because we're playing the Shade Brigadine. If you don't play the Shade Brigadine, take it out. It's entirely up to you. But again, this is another nice bounce. And with so many spell cards lying around, you can steal your opponent's spell card and then get a nice draw off it as well. And then we've got a Utopia Future and a Utopic Draco Future. Again, just because all of these, apart from these two, well, not don't know why I went these two, apart from this one, are not numbers. So they're all rank 4s, again, apart from these two and these two. So anything you make here can also give you a Utopic Draco future rather than a Machillis. So for example, if you went to bounce back a Mirror Jade and you banish the card, you can't go into the Magnifica, so you go, right, okay, well, I'll put these two rank 4s together, I'm going to make a Utopic future, and then I'm going to go to a Utopic Draco future. So again, gives you a couple of options to play around with, as you see fit and adapt into your personal playstyle. And that is pretty much it, ladies and gentlemen. So I would show you kind of like a basic combo, but although the combos really need about like 3 cards, it's quite depressing. But it is still a very, very cool deck. So I'll show you like... I'll show you a basic one, so we'll just go with like Stella and Irene. So I believe, if I do this correctly, I might need one more monster. I might need an additional monster in the hand. But I kind of want to show you the reason that we use the redoers. So I suppose redoers kind of, like the redoer or the winder pretty much takes the space of that additional card you might need. So which is why it's kind of cool to play it. But you're going to normal summon the Stella. Stella will then special summon any Exosister. Obviously, if you've got Elise, it gets a little bit better because you get the additional effect. You're then going to overlay these. You're going to go for the spell first. Where are you? So, you go for your Machillis. Because your Machillis will give you the spell, which gives you the packs. So, detach. Give you the packs. You can activate these packs if you want to, but again, keep in mind that you need to make sure you've got the alternative in the graveyard, which you've got your Eileen. So, you're going to make sure you go for your Sophia and work it that way. So you can use this, pay 100 life points to add an Exosister, and then if you added one that has a counterpart in the graveyard, which is Irene, you then can special summon it. So you get to special summon down the Stella. So again, keep in mind is that you can not Stella, sorry, pick the wrong one. Sophia, too many S's. There we go, Sophia. You can then special summon down the Sophia. You've then got the ability, if you wanted to, with Sophia, that if you can try another Exosystem monster, which you do, you draw 1 card. So this is obviously a way you can get that extra level 4 to the board. But again, I'm specifically showing you what the Winder does for us. We've conducted our normal summon, so the Winder's a little bit less effective going further forward, but it will still do the same thing. So you use the effect of Winder to detach a material there, special summon down the Winder. You can then trigger the Winder's effect to add you a... add you another Time Thief, so we can give you a follow-up for the next turn if you want to. Otherwise, you're mainly going to go for your Adjuster, which will give you a follow-up for the next turn anyway. And then you overlay these two here. You can go into Castell. Keep in mind as well, we still have the 1 random draw card as well. You can then detach this, which will let you add a Exosister monster. So this gives you the ability as well. Yeah, Exosister monster. So again, if you do Castell first, you kind of need to make sure you've got that extra Exosister. Well, get there eventually. Where are you? There we go. So you got Elise, which is basically a free summon if you control an Exosister. So if you didn't have the ability to get an extender, this can then become your extender, and as long as you can get into Machillis, you're going. But again, you just replenish your entire hand, and then what you do here is you put these two together, and you go into your Magnifica. Now what this now means is that during your opponent's turn, what you then have the ability to do is you detach material. You detach the material of the card you don't want to XYZ summon. So for example, if I want to double banish, as I mentioned, I'll detach the Castell, and then I will banish a card. Then I'll be able to trigger effect when my opponent activates a card or effect. I can trigger it to return 1 XYZ monster you own, attach this card to the extra deck, and then you can special summon that monster from the extra deck using this as material. So I return Machillis to the extra deck, and then special summon Machillis on top, which then has a quick effect banish. If I want to do it the other way, just to kind of lock out the graveyard, then you would detach Machillis first, you would return Castell, and then Castell would go on top. And that's pretty much it. Like, I like the idea of the deck. I just feel that it requires a lot until we get the new card in Power of the Elements. But it's definitely a deck that I still recommend people pick up. While it's as low and as cheap as this, it's kind of a no-brainer to kind of, if you like it, of course, and if you're a fan of XYZ decks, it's a bit of a no-brainer to go and pick it up and, you know, trial it out, or at least trial it out online, see what you feel, and if you actually like it or not. And if you do, then you're good to rock and roll. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. Till next time, guys, as absolutely always, stay safe. And of course, happy dueling.